You're listening to the We Are Libertarians Podcast Network. Find all of our shows at wearelibertarians.com.
Now at Verizon Business, every business can get the new Samsung Galaxy S25 Plus. Whether you're a new customer, loyal customer, or returning customer, this one's for you, you, and you on America's most reliable 5G network. Get the new Galaxy S25 Plus on us, powered by Verizon Business. 256 gigabyte on us. New device payment purchase agreement, select trade-in, and business unlimited plan required. Credit varies by smartphone trade-in. Applied to account over agreement term up to 36 months. Terms apply. Limited time offer.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. During tax season, your personal info travels to a lot of places. Between payroll, your tax consultant, and the IRS. If your W-2 gets exposed, that's just the ticket for identity thieves. That's why LifeLock monitors millions of data points every second. If your identity is stolen, they'll fix it guaranteed or your money back. Don't let identity thieves take you for a ride. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
Welcome to We Are Libertarians. My name is Chris Spangle, and this is going to be a different show than normal. I host the public affairs show in Indianapolis on the local radio stations, the cluster. I work for an iHeart cluster, and it's called Now Hear This. You can listen on the podcast feed if you're out of town. And what I try to do with it is describe the problem that nonprofits are solving and how they're solving it. So it's not necessarily a local show, while most of the people are local. And I've been really pushing to do a lot of shows around COVID-19 and how that's impacting the community. And I normally just put that in the feed and leave it up there, but I just finished an interview with the Children's Bureau, and I feel like this is a show this is an episode that everybody needs to listen to, because many of us are really lucky and really privileged to live in the places and the way that we do. And we talked a little bit about, in the last episode, not living in 1918, but the level of misery that is taking place right now for so many people is so profound. And it's not just because of the economic situation or the disease, it's both. And what I think you hear in these conversations with various organizations is that level of misery. And I think it's something that, I do the show with Miss Pat, and she grew up in the inner city of Atlanta, and she goes, Chris, what you don't understand is that there are a lot of people in this country that are not concerned about the things that you're concerned about, because they're living the experience you're having right now every single day. And I think we need to be reminded of that need a lot of times for perspective. And also because it shows us that we need to help and we need to be part of the solution and be out in our communities right now, leading efforts in nonprofits, raising money, raising blood drives, raising goods, because the need right now is so incredibly great. And it is hard to hear, and it is hard to imagine that people are going through what they're going through. And I think you will hear that in the first 15 minutes of this. It is impactful. And the fights on the internet that we all have every day are really a waste of time. And the conversation about my rights and liberties are being taken from me is an important one that we ought to have, but we are missing the moment to get out into our communities and be leaders, and to help solve the actual problems that are going on instead of spending it all day on Twitter. This was just this episode, I think, is one of the most important episodes that we've brought to you, because you need to hear what's happening and you need to understand what's happening in the community. And it's going to be happening for a long time. It would have happened whether the government acted or not. A pandemic means that people were always going to get sick and people were always going to be out of work. And what faces us in the years to come is what you're about to hear. And every single person in this audience has to make a choice. Am I going to use my privileged position to help others and to leverage that into easing the misery that is taking place around us? or am I going to ignore the moment that I could have changed lives? So many of these organizations you're free and welcome to support and donate. If you're not from Indiana, I guarantee there is a version of it in your town, city, county, state. So I would ask that you reach out. And whatever you're passionate about, that nonprofit right now desperately needs your money, time, help, volunteerism, in whatever way they can get it. So please consider helping and consider getting out in the community and making an impact where you can be impactful, because you're probably not changing lives on Facebook. This is where you can change lives. So thank you so much for listening, and I appreciate everyone's time, and I appreciate you listening to this program. An enormous issue that our next guest is tackling is Tina Cloer, who is the CEO of the Children's Bureau, and their website is childrensbureau.org. Tina, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Please tell us what the Children's Bureau does. What do you do?
So Children's Bureau is one of the oldest nonprofits in the city. We were founded in 1851, and we provide services to prevent child abuse and also services to help intervene after child abuse or neglect has occurred in a family.
And in our interview with Kids Voice, they mentioned that there has been a significant uptick in child abuse, but it's rapidly unreported. What are you hearing? What are you seeing out in the community?
The number of child abuse calls coming in has decreased drastically because school's not in, kids are not out and about now. They're more or less trapped in their homes. But what we do know is that the calls that are coming in are tragic. They're coming from hospitals with kids basically being deceased or having fatal injuries.
Wow. Okay. I imagine, can you explain why there's a decrease in calls if we're seeing an uptick in that kind of violence?
It's because the mandatory reporters that would normally be seeing those kids and families out at school, at their therapist's office, just in the normal course of action, or other family members who would be coming into contact with their relatives who are who they believe are being abused or neglected, are no longer seeing them. So the stay-at-home order really has isolated victims of domestic violence in those situations, and those homes are more stressed than they've ever been because of a lot of financial stressors. So it's just a very frightening time in terms of the well-being of our kids and other victims of domestic violence in the community.
So when we say child abuse, what does that look like, and what forms does that express itself, and what would a mandatory reporter, like a therapist or a school teacher, what would they see? How would you know that a child is being abused?
Well, it can range from the kids not having their basic needs met and being neglected, from them not being supervised and being left home alone, to all the way up to pretty violent acts of physical abuse and sexual abuse. We're going to see, and we are seeing, a huge decrease in what's being reported, but the cases that are coming in are just really tragic levels of physical and sexual abuse.
Can you give some context to the order of magnitude? What's the difference between what you may have seen 2 months ago versus what you're seeing now in some of these numbers that you're talking about?
Well, the numbers are, they come out a month behind, so we don't have a full month's numbers yet. But what we know from talking to our partners at the Department of Child Services is that largely their phones aren't ringing. They're getting very few calls, but that the ones that are coming in largely from the only people who would be seeing these kids in those kind of situations, which are first responders in the hospitals. So,
man, that's such a tough problem to solve. I mean, if you are a neighbor, I would imagine that the person listening that may have some suspicions of some sort, maybe a neighbor or a loved one. What advice would you give to those people who have some level of suspicion? Because it's a hard thing to call DCS and make an accusation, and what level would you say you should, if you're concerned, take action?
what we've really been encouraging people to do is to lay eyes on the kids in your life. So for all the providers who are still, because, we're all still working, instead of just delivering food and help with that, we actually physically ask the kids to come out so that we can lay eyes on them. So we're encouraging everybody who can to lay eyes on the children around you in your life. If you're a relative, often you already know that that the kids in your family or circle of influence may have. Often when there are troubles there, and this situation with COVID-19 just escalates that. So we encourage them to text the kids and see what's going on, so that if they can't say something out loud, they could say it through text or messaging. To get them on Skype and take a look at them and make sure they look okay. That if you haven't heard from your family members in a while, and you know that they're potentially in an abusive situation, that you check in on them. And if you have grave fears, you contact DCS or the police for a welfare check. All those systems are still working. And your providers are still here. We're just having to do work differently. So if people are concerned and they think they see something, they need to say something, and make sure that you contact the people who can provide help.
So at what point are you brought into the process? How does Children's Bureau get involved in the life of a child?
So on the prevention side, we get calls from families every day who are asking for help in getting what they need to take care of their kids. That's one of the primary things that we do. We partner with Department of Child Services, who actually funds that project, along with some grantors. So families call us and basically let us know that they need things to be able to care for their kids. Like right now during this epidemic, in some parts of the state, there aren't diapers available on the shelves. Your town is small enough that it may only have a Walmart. And if Walmart doesn't have them, you can't get them. So we have been shipping those around the state and disseminating them often to the food banks and diaper banks and stuff like that, so that we can push them out to the families who need them. So we do a lot of that kind of work in terms of helping families get their basic needs met. We're helping people with food and hygiene supplies, just all kinds of things like that in communities across central Indiana. We call that program is called Community Partners for Child Safety. So it's a prevention program, and people can just call and ask for help. So we do a lot of that kind of work. And then the other side of what we do is providing assistance and intervention after some kind of abuse or neglect has happened. So those cases get to us because DCS calls after something's happened in a family, and we may be providing foster care for a child. We are often going out into homes of parents who have a history of abusing and neglecting their kids, and we're trying to teach them to be better parents. In this current situation, we're also checking on those kids to make sure they're safe and they have what they need. So there are a number of different ways that people begin receiving services from Children's Bureau.
What's the best way for a listener to help you? Is it a volunteer situation, cash donations, donation of goods? What's the best way for people to get involved in your work?
So we operate 3 shelters here in Indy for kids. One of them we just opened this week is called Project Courage, and it's a shelter that is caring for the children of adults who've been affected by COVID-19 and are hospitalized or too ill to care for their kids. So all 3 shelters have an ongoing need for things that you need to take care of kids. So our website, if you go to that under the donate section and look and open it up, there are actually lists of items that we need for the various programs to help meet the needs of those kids. So people can either donate resources or they can go on there and choose items off our Amazon list, and it'll ship it straight to us, and we can get it to the kids in the shelters.
Can you give an example of some of the items that might be needed?
Yeah. So typically we are able to accept donated clothes and things like that are gently used. But right now we can't because of all the concern about infection, and we're not allowed to have people in our building. So the kids are coming to us with only the clothes on their backs. So we need at least a spare outfit for each one of those kids. So there's a lot of clothing items on there, diapers, wipes. Our kids, some of them are, in one of the shelters, all of the kids have been exposed to the virus and some are sick. So we're having to set those rooms up like hospital rooms and isolate the kids in quarantine. So we are asking for crafts and coloring books and games, things they can do by themselves, because they're going to be spending 14 days in isolation. So, if you can imagine, that's difficult. And we have kids as young as 2 in that shelter. So it's just getting the things that we need. We basically started getting a lot of those calls from hospitals and first responders with kids that needed someplace safe to be while their parents and caregivers were recovering. So we put the shelter together and some level are building it as we go in terms of getting some of the rest of those things that we need just to keep things running.
How many kids are we talking and what kind of age ranges?
We take kids from birth to 18. And between the 3 shelters, we have about 60, 65 beds right now.
And these are kids whose parents, their single parent gets sick and then there's no other family member that's able to care for them?
Well, there's some of that. There's also, there are a lot of grandparents raising kids right now because of our years of going through the opiate epidemic and addiction epidemic. So we've had cases where both grandparents were in the hospital. One grandparent died. We were waiting for the other one to get out to be able to take the kids back. So we get that. We've had single parents who are hospitalized. We have, right now family is pretty loosely defined. There are a lot of different versions of kinship care happening with different folks raising kids. And so we're supporting them by helping out with the kids. So it's really almost every situation you can think of in terms of who is in need of that. And some of them are people who would be people that typically live in poverty, and some of them are not. Some of them are middle-class people who just may not have any contact or know anyone here, or where their own relatives are already too high risk to take on kids that have been exposed to the virus.
Well, let's go back to the financial need, the family need. Before I ask my final question, I just want to give some context again, because I think people are spending all day on Twitter. They're seeing debates between, lives versus the economy, but the need here is kind of getting missed for most people. And can you give an idea of, for you on the ground, the difference between this time last year and what's happening right now?
Yeah, so on a normal month in my child abuse prevention programs, we receive about 350 referrals for people who need basic needs assistance, which is like rent, utilities, food, very basic things, diapers. We, in April so far, the first week of April, we've had 650 requests. We had 650 referrals for families in 1 week. So we have pulled over resources inside the agency from other programs, and our staff are working, 12 or 14 hours a day, taking phone calls of people who are desperate. A lot of the people that are contacting us work in the service industry or in sales, and many have filed for unemployment, but no check has come yet. So they're kind of in that space in between where, the 1st of April happened and they were already people who were dependent on maybe not the highest income, and then it didn't come. So it's been a challenge. The cost for people whose kids, even some of the grandparents who were raising children, the kids were previously being fed at least some of their meals, a lot of times breakfast and lunch at school. And now that is not occurring. And many of them don't have transportation to go actually pick that up. They're having to come up with the money to pay for that. So we're trying to help plug those gaps. It's an overwhelming volume of calls, and that's just in Marion County. We do this service in 32 counties across the state.
Tina Cloer, CEO of Children's Bureau. Your website is childrensbureau.org. That is BUREAU.org. And that link will be in our show notes on our website if people want to go there and click there. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate everything you're doing. It sounds like it's making a big difference in a lot of people's lives, and I appreciate your work.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I have the pleasure today of speaking to Jay Height, who is the Executive Director of Shepherd Community Center on the Near East Side. Jay, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about Shepherd Community Center. What are you? Where are you? What do you do?
Yeah, Shepherd Community is serving the Near East Side of Indianapolis for the last 35 years. We are on East Washington between Sherman and Emerson. We've been here. We used to be at State in Washington, and a little over 15 years ago moved further east and have served this area in a continuum of care, working with children, teens, and their families to about 500 families, as well as serving the neighborhood and other residents with additional services.
So obviously this is a time unlike any of our memories in recent past. So how are you adjusting to help at-risk families during the COVID-19 pandemic?
Well, we pivoted 3 weeks ago to focus in very much a relief mode to make sure the basic needs of our neighbors are being met, making sure that they have food, making sure they can pay their bills and they're not going to be evicted or have any of their utilities shut off. We're working with making sure their medical needs are being met. We are working to continue the education to the 400 plus students we work with every day in our normal programming to make sure they can continue moving forward academically through e-learning. And then we're trying to connect to a community where social isolation is causing all kinds of challenges, and want to make sure that folks know that they have neighbors who care for them.
So let's go through some of those 5 areas and talk about the various needs and how you are helping. Let's start with food. How big of a need right now is there in food in some of the families that are at risk?
It's overwhelming. So every day we distribute sack breakfast and lunch to students. Afternoons we provide meals to probably, say, 200 families so that they have something that they can warm up and eat. Every 2 weeks we do a food giveaway of 500 boxes of food. Every Friday we're doing breakfast in a bag, a partnership with Elanco, where we are providing pork product, milk, eggs, and bread, all raised and brought to market through Indiana farmers and producers, and so we appreciate that partnership. We're working with great organizations like Second Helpings, Midwest Food Bank, Gleaners, and partnering with folks like Safeway, where we're purchasing food. It is very difficult, and so hunger is an unfortunate reality, and we're doing everything we can to get food out, sharing some of what we have with others so that other organizations can meet the needs of those that they have relationships with. You know, all of these issues are bigger than any one organization. It's going to take all of us working together, and we're blessed to have a lot of great friends in the city.
So can you give us an idea of the difference between, you know, maybe this time last year or January versus the need for food, the demand for food versus now? What's changed?
It's 180 degrees.
Really?
People have struggled, and I would have said a month ago that the challenge was really around access, that we had enough food. Right now, the just-in-time supply chain can't keep up with this huge demand, and so it's hard to find food. It's very difficult, and so it's requiring a lot on our behalf to keep people fed. And we've reconstituted our own kitchen where we provide meals to over 2,000 meals to kids every week during our normal programming. So now we're trying to help feed the whole family.
Every idea starts with a problem. Warby Parker's was simple. Glasses are too expensive. So they set out to change that. By designing glasses in-house and selling directly to customers, they're able to offer prescription eyewear that's expertly crafted and unexpectedly affordable. Warby Parker glasses are made from premium materials like impact-resistant polycarbonate and custom acetate, and they start at just $95, including prescription lenses. Get glasses made from the good stuff. Stop by a Warby Parker store near you.
How much does, people panic buying at the store at Meijer or Kroger or whatever? How much does that impact somebody like you? Is that a huge drain?
Well, I think it is created a shortfall that then when we're trying to secure it, I think a lot of folks in central Indiana are blessed that they could stock up, but my neighbors don't have that luxury. And so then the shelves are empty when they go. So we're starting to see now a few weeks into this that things like diapers and feminine hygiene and shampoo and those personal care items that are very expensive and you can't use food stamps for, you can't use SNAP for, that now that's becoming a precious commodity. And we're trying to address that too. And we're telling folks, hey, you can go online and order it and ship it to us, but many times when they go online, stuff's not there.
So if people want to donate food or items or goods, do you have a place that they can do that? Do you encourage that?
Absolutely. They can go online and find their store, whether it's Target, Walmart, Amazon, wherever they like to shop, and then have it shipped to us. And we're having that happen every day. Some people are stopping by and dropping it off. The online shopping sure makes it a lot easier for folks to donate. And those products are all things that we're getting out as quick as we can.
Talking to Jay Height, who is the executive director of the Shepherd Community Center. You can find their website as shepherdcommunity.org, helping the Near East Side. The next focus area in this 120-day plan is family stability, financial assistance. Can you give us an idea of some of the needs there?
Sure. It's paying the very basic bills for many of our neighbors who've gotten laid off, and they're hoping to get the stimulus checks. The problem with all of that is it's going to take probably into May before those start arriving. And so that creates some difficulty. And so April's going to be a tough month, and so we're trying to help them pay their bills. I so appreciate folks like Citizens Gas who have gone out of their way to create ways for our families to keep connected to their services. They're reaching out and saying that they have funds to help. They're making sure that if someone had their water turned off, they turn it back on. That's great leadership. I appreciate Citizens Gas for doing that. And Spectrum has given free internet for a couple of months to our neighbors as well. And those are great ways that companies who are out there to do business and to make money so that they can keep doing business are being creative and helping our neighbors. But we're also having to help them with some other bills and things like cell phones during this time are not a luxury. They're actually needed. And it's the way many of our neighbors actually can go online to fill out their unemployment. Part of the challenge, we're working to make our parking lot a hotspot, because where do you go if you don't have connectivity at home? And the places that most of our neighbors would go are closed. And so we're trying to help them so that they can pull into our lot, they can walk here and be able to connect.
So would something like a cash donation to Shepherd Community help you with some of that, or is that about partners, working with partnerships? How can our listeners help you in this area?
Well, people can donate. There's a site on our website, the COVID-19 landing spot, where they can go on and donate, and 100% of that money is going to be used for our response. We're spending more money than we normally do, but we should, and that's what's needed. We're thankful that we're here and we're able to do this. We're getting about 25 phone calls a day of neighbors, 25 to 50. It averages out that they're calling us saying, hey, I need help with this bill. I need to buy this medicine, that kind of stuff.
So speaking of medicine, the next focus area is the medical area. What is your organization doing in this respect?
We have a paramedic in a partnership with Eskenazi that is on our team, and we've redeployed him. He's actually going to seniors' homes, making sure that they are being taken care of. If they have some type of chronic health care, we're taking scales in, we're taking automatic blood pressure cuffs, oxygen readers so that they can monitor themselves. We're working with volunteer doctors that if someone was to say, hey, I'd like to help, we're getting volunteer retired docs who are just calling our neighbors to say, what was your blood pressure today? And making sure that the scales are really about, are you gaining weight, which would tell us that we need to be worried about your heart, or if you gain a lot of weight quickly, then our paramedic will go back out and see what needs to happen. We're trying to keep people out of the hospital. The assumption for many is that telemedicine will be the way folks get their care. But, I'm 54 years old, and if I want to do technology, my adult kids come over and help their old dad because I'm just not very swift with it. And then to expect our neighbors who have never had anything like this being thrust upon them, they're not going to know. And so we're trying to take iPads into their homes so that they can access medicine, but also trying to teach them how to do that. We're going to get their medicines for them. We're trying to get them signed up on their prescriptions to be delivered. So we're fulfilling various roles around medical, really being a conduit of connections to keep people out and making sure they're staying in touch with their primary care doctor.
And you're actually looking for 25 tablets to help assist with this effort. Is that something that people could donate a tablet or?
Yes.
Okay. Next up is e-learning, and you have a donor that gave $26,000. And what is some of that money going towards, and how are you helping families get set up with e-learning?
Yeah, we very quickly, right before school let out, we got 160 Chromebooks and tablets so that the older kids could have the Chromebooks, the younger kids. We have an elementary school, and making sure all of them had access. We're so they can do e-learning, and we're pushing information out every day. The teachers are teaching through e-learning. We have been working and getting tablets for our middle school and high school students who attend different schools here in the neighborhood, making sure that they can access e-learning. And we're working in partnership with IPS, and where there's kids in our neighborhoods who go to IPS school, but they come to us for after school. We want to make sure they have access to computers, and so that's sort of our next phase of what we're trying to get together.
Okay, and the last in your 5 focus area is social isolation. What are some ways that you're trying to help people feel more connected?
We're pushing information out to them. We're texting them videos. We're having volunteers who will call them twice a week and just check with them, talk to them, see what's going on, ask them, how they're feeling, and just that simple phone conversation goes a long way in making sure that our neighbors don't feel like they're forgotten.
So I saw a stat that Indianapolis has been hard hit, and a lot of the hotlines, obviously deaths of despair, be it suicide, overdoses, were already on the rise. I mean, how much of an impact has this had in that area in this crisis in the last 3 weeks?
Well, we hope it's helping move the needle. We don't know, and we may not know for some time, but we're going to do everything we can and just keep calling people and connecting with them and let them know that we do believe in the adage that you're supposed to love your neighbor, and we're going to live that.
Have you seen an increase in overdoses? That's one of my fears, is that people will...
Absolutely.
Really?
Absolutely. Yeah. Actually, a week ago was one of the highest spikes we've had in a long time. We have a support group, and we're hearing back from them incredible pressure. I think we're all struggling with this idea of quarantine and being stuck at home and not being able to get out. And then you take folks who have some challenges as it deals with addictions, and those things can surface quickly. And we're trying to, using technology to connect to our neighbors that have this challenge, to make sure that they don't see that as an option they have to take.
Jay Height, the Executive Director of the Shepherd Community Center, you're doing important, great work. If people want to support you, what are some of the best ways that they can support your work?
Well, we would tell folks if you would like to, you can donate. You can go to our website. There's information on there, but you can always go to any of the shopping sites to donate to buy personal care items, personal hygiene items, as well as food. We'll be faithful to get that out to our families. And if you have questions, you can call us at 317-375-0203, and we will get back to you. Right now, it's really difficult to have volunteers come down because of the health crisis. In the future, we'll be able to have volunteers coming back. But as we said, we want to make sure we're all standing together 6 feet apart.
Excellent. Thank you, Jay Height of the Shepherd Community Center on the Near East Side. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Chris.
We're speaking to restaurants that are making a difference. Obviously, the restaurant industry has been hit hard through the shutdown and the pandemic, and there are a lot of restaurants out there who are doing a lot of good work to help a lot of people, and one of those folks is Danielle Cooney, who is the general manager of Soupremacy. And Danielle, thank you for joining me.
You're welcome.
Tell us a little bit about your restaurant, where you're located, and what do you specialize in?
Sure. So we are located right off of Monument Circle on East Market Street, right next to Starbucks. We specialize in gourmet soups and salads and paninis. We offer, in normal times, 13 to 15 soups that that rotate every day, and then some classics that stay on the menu all the time.
So obviously,
and then we do delivery, catering, all of that stuff.
Okay, so you do catering. I apologize, I stepped on you there. So obviously, this is not normal times, and there's a lot of concern for the restaurant industry, obviously, because of the shift in people's habits and abilities. So how did you initially, and how are you continuing to make? Obviously, you're open and you're doing a lot of different things. How did you come to that conclusion? What were your first thoughts as this started to hit?
Your first thought as a restaurateur when this started, we kind of saw it happening in other cities and knew it was going to happen. So it was just a matter of when it was going to happen. So we, a week or so prior, kind of started thinking of ways that we could, as not just a restaurant, but as a small business, survive the potential of a complete shutdown. The other thing that we knew is that we had a product that we just wanted to get in front of as many people as possible, without trying to make a profit. We have things in place for a lot of different types of people, the frontline workers, the people that are now jobless, all of those types of people. And we just wanted to try to do what we do best. We feed people. We feed them good, nutritious food, and we wanted to be able to continue doing that to lots of different.
So let's talk about some of the programs that you've got going on. First, tell us about Feeding the Front Lines. What are you doing in that respect?
So the Feed the Front Lines program is a program where people can go to our website and order online, and they just say that they want to feed the front lines. They can choose however many they want. It is $6 per bowl of soup. So there is a discount on that. And then we are in touch with local hospitals to take those bowls of soup to their staff. And it's not necessarily the ER staff. There are units that are directly involved in COVID-19, but there's a lot of other units that have to deal with the same stuff. So we took soup to the Eggman Cancer Center. We've done Community East. We're doing Eskenazi on Monday. So that's what that program is. And it's just a way to try to get good food into the people's stomachs that are fighting the hardest for us,
Yeah. It's tough. My mom is an RN in Hendricks Community, and obviously it's a very difficult time for me, for her, and everybody involved. Mm-hmm. So it's, not knowing a lot of specifics of what's going on, things at HIPAA, I can tell you that it's very difficult in those COVID units. So I thank you for doing that. I know it means a lot to the people that are working there. Tell us about Sponsor a Soup. What is that program?
So the Sponsor a Soup, it's $15. So there's a little bit of a discount there. And those quarts of soup, it's a quart of soup instead of just a bowl, and it's actually being taken to different community centers, different outreach programs, anybody that has the ability to keep the soup frozen and then distribute it to people that need it. So we've partnered with, the MLK Center and some of those, the Horizon House and some of that. And people can, again, go on our website, order as many as they want, and then we just take it to the centers as they need stuff. So it's really great. It, again, gets good food into people's stomachs that, may not have, that have just kind of found themselves all of a sudden trying to figure it out,
What are you hearing in terms of the need?
There are a lot of programs that are giving soup or giving food in general to different programs. There is a very large need for stuff like that right now. But I think as a city, we are doing a really good job of filling that need.
Excellent. And so people can go to your website. Tell us the website, please.
It's Soupremacy.com. So SOUPREMACY.com.
And people can find that in the show notes on the podcast or at our website, nowhearthisindy.com, if you want to go and make a $15 donation to help feed a family or help feed the front line. And you're also offering a catering option. Tell us a little bit about that, please.
So we're doing 2 weekly deliveries throughout Marion County and the surrounding 9 counties, and it's a family meal deal. So it's a quart of soup, a family-sized salad, and a pack of 12 Amelia's dinner rolls for $35. It's delivered free of charge to your door. With that program, if you wanted to do something like, if you wanted to do the family meal deal, you could also add on a sponsored soup or a Feed the Frontline with that as well. And then we would take those directly to the hospitals and the food pantries and stuff.
That's great.
And that you would also find on our website. There would be a form for you to fill out, and we would send you an invoice for it.
Yeah, go ahead. Tell the website again. Let's get it out there as much as we can.
It's Soupremacy.com. SOUPREMACY.com.
And you're doing a lot of those deliveries. Have you done delivery before? I mean, how much have you had to expand your delivery options, and how are you handling that?
So we have always offered delivery in a 16-block radius of downtown, Monday through Friday, 10:30 to 3, for kind of your single sandwich delivery orders or single soup delivery orders, or, a catering order. We have drastically expanded our delivery area for like the family meal deal, and we do like a frozen soup delivery every other week as well. We started that back in December, doing it once a month. And are continuing to offer it in increased intervals as people need it.
So let me ask this, because a lot of these new strategies that I think a lot of businesses are having to come up with, my assumption is a lot of those will kind of stick around afterwards. Are you looking past this and going, hey, we're doing this thing now and we're going to keep doing it afterwards? Or is it sort of triage for you right now? Have you given thought to the future and how your business might change through this?
We have, actually. I think that everything we are doing currently, we will continue to do. We will still offer a Feed the Frontline program. We will still offer Sponsor a Soup. We will still do the frozen soup delivery. We will still do the family meal deals. We won't deliver the family meal deals twice a week, but they will still be available. And they may be something we offer once a month, once things kind of go back to normal. Some of that we'll just have to see how it plays out, if there's still enough interest in getting things like that delivered. But the Feed the Frontlines, right now it's the nurses and the doctors. But in October, it might be the police stations and the fire departments and the Army base. It's the front lines changes based on how the country is. So that is where our focus would be with that.
Excellent. So thank you so much for joining us. I've got one final question for you, and it is this. As you're out and you're in the community and you're dropping things off or you're talking to people as you're setting these things up, what do you think people ought to know as you talk to a lot of these frontline folks? What do people need to hear right now?
That is a good question. One of the biggest things that I have heard from specifically people on the front line, the nurses I've talked to, the people that have come out to get the food, is really how grateful they are. It really helps boost the morale when they get deliveries like that. They're very appreciative and thankful, and I think it helps them feel like they're not doing this alone. I think just the big draw of the community reaching out to help. I can't personally feed the hospital, the entire hospital by myself, but I can donate, $10 or $15 with 500 other people, and we can feed the entire hospital. We can feed multiple hospitals. And I think just people coming together and doing that has been really impactful to them.
Excellent. Again, that we are talking to Danielle Cooney, who is the general manager of Soupremacy, and their website. Tell us your website again one more time, please.
It's Soupremacy.com, SOUPREMACY.com.
Excellent. So please go help the frontline folks, help people who are in need. We encourage you to go and help Soupremacy in this time. Everybody's looking. There's a lot of need, and we thank you, Danielle, for doing your part. And I know it's greatly appreciated by everyone in the audience. So thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you.
On my timeline, there has been a constant flow of questions about parenting time and issues between two parents that may have custody issues. And so we're going to talk a lot about that today. But first, let's talk about what Kids Voices of Indiana does. So, Lindsay, if you wouldn't mind, tell us, what does Kids Voices do?
Yeah, so Kids Voice of Indiana, we are actually celebrating our 35th year in 2020. So we have been around for a long time, and we focus on three main areas. So the first one is what you mentioned, Katie is the director of. So that is our Children's Law Center of Indiana program. And it has a statewide reach and focuses on education and training for anybody. People that are attorneys, people that are social workers that want to be child advocates. So we do a lot of training and education around that. But a big part of that is education and guidance and free legal information for the public. So we have an educational website. We take phone calls to our office. We have free legal clinics when we're able to do them in person. And so that is where we really focus on with the Children's Law Center. And then in addition to that, we also have a guardian ad litem program. And we have volunteers that serve as advocates or guardian ad litems for children in Marion County Family Court. And then we also do supervised visitation at our office. And so we provide that service for non-custodial parents and children to see each other when the judge has decided that there has to be a supervisor present. So we offer that at our office as well.
And your website is kidsvoicein.org. Their phone number is 317-558-2870. They have a great FAQ on custody parenting time during the COVID-19 pandemic, and you can find that PDF in the show notes, but also at their website. And I will say on behalf of Lindsay, Scott, and Katie Kelsey, this is not legal advice. This is just a simple conversation guiding people. So please, if you have any specific issues, make sure that you contact an attorney. Having been around friends who have gone through custody battles, Katie, there seems to be one basic guiding principle in the mind of judges and the minds of people like yourself. And can you explain what that particular principle is?
Yeah, so absent really extraordinary circumstances, of a parent's own bad behavior, it's really in the best interest of children to have frequent and ongoing contact with both their parents. So courts are going to presume it's in a child's best interest to continue as normal with the normal custody arrangement and normal parenting time arrangements. The pandemic doesn't change that. It may make things more complicated, but it doesn't change that, and it doesn't make a parent unfit. The law presumes that a parent is a fit parent who can take care of their child.
So even if you live in a location with travel restrictions, normal parenting time as outlined by parenting guidelines, which is set by the state, or in a custody agreement, should be followed.
Yes. So the executive order for Indiana specifically provides for travel relating to dealing with custody and parenting time arrangements as an essential piece of travel. So that is a pretty strong indicator that parenting time and custody arrangements should continue as normal. The executive order also provides that care for a minor child is part of an essential activity. So parents should continue on as normal with their normal parenting time arrangements.
Lindsay, that doesn't stop some parents from not reading executive orders or from looking this information up. What should a parent do if they show up to pick up their kid, or they're stopped at the door? I'm not picking up the child. You're not allowed to take the kid. You have to continue to go to work. What should a parent do if that situation occurs, in your opinion?
So I think that's a tough question, because I think that is a situation that's very stressful for both parents, but also can be traumatic for the kids. So I think the goal should always be to minimize that trauma and that stress on that child. I think people's first instinct would be to call the police if something like that occurred. And honestly, they have a lot going on during this time. So their ability to be able to assist may be minimized. And oftentimes, they don't really want to get involved in civil issues anyway. I think the best thing to do is really document, what is happening, not by recording. I don't mean that, but I mean, keep real good notes of dates and times and things like that. So, if there is a certain custody exchange or parenting time that you should have had that you did not get. In addition, the courts are still accepting what we would call an emergency petition regarding something that's going on. So if somebody needs to file something with the court about the inability to see their child or being withheld their child or something to that effect, they could definitely contact their attorney or our office to get information on how to do that. Because of course, everything is only being filed electronically right now. So I would say, the best thing to do is really try to communicate between the parents. Be flexible, think about the children's best interest. Obviously, I know things are going to happen, but we want to try to minimize the stress and trauma on everybody involved right now.
Okay, so courts for these sorts of things are open, but what do you say to either Lindsay Scott, President, CEO of Kids Voices of Indiana, or Katie Kelsey, who's the director of the Children's Law Center of Indiana? What do you say to a parent who's concerned about their child's safety or their own safety, and the other parent is someone that is deemed essential? They're, let's say, working in a grocery store or working landscaping or something, and they're moving about in this pandemic, and the other parent is concerned about everyone's welfare. Like, how do you deal with that? How do the courts deal with that, I guess, is the better way to say it.
So this is kind of a benefit of having a legal community like we have in Indiana, because a lot of family law attorneys and judicial officers have had really informal conversations about, like, okay, we're in this crazy time. What should we expect? How should we guide our clients? What do you want to see from us, judges? And we've kind of come to a consensus that, still parenting time and custody should proceed as normal. You should adhere to your orders. If there are really complicating factors, like a child is a medically complex child and they've got special concerns, maybe that might be a situation where you need to communicate with the other parent and figure out, like, hey, can we figure out another way to do this? Should the child come stay with me for a while? Should we figure out a different quarantine period? What kind of safety procedures are we feeling? So the courts are still really wanting to emphasize, that this is a chance for parents to work together and, show their ability to do this. But absent that, they still have the ability to turn to the court and say, we have this true disagreement and emergency. So yeah, you might find situations where one parent is a frontline worker and is constantly getting exposed to this virus, and the other parent legitimately has concerns about exposing the child and their own family unit to it. So that's a concern that if they can't work out together, that may be a good reason to consult an attorney or to turn to the court, especially if there are underlying complicating medical issues. But I will say that unilaterally withholding parenting time or taking a child and not returning them to the custodial parent is not going to be looked on favorably by the courts when this is all over, and they will definitely remember what happened.
Is that generally considered contempt and something that a judge would look very unfavorably on?
Well, I can't ever predict what a particular judicial officer is going to do. It certainly is a possibility, but these are also really extraordinary times. So a parent's good faith concerns may undercut that. So it's very hard to predict, but using it to your advantage, using a situation like this to your advantage is something that's really not going to go over well.
Yeah. So
and
what
Sue,
go ahead,
sorry.
Lindsay.
So just after the executive order was issued, talking about some of the things Katie mentioned about, essential travel and things for custody and parenting time, the Indiana Supreme Court also issued an order that basically indicated the same thing. We want to make sure that everyone understands that custody and parenting time and child support, for that matter, should stay the same. And it really indicates at the end that if you can't pay your child support, if you have legitimate concerns about the safety of your children, then, the courts are the source to get the help for that. And they basically make a statement that, we know that this is unprecedented time, but the best interest in the health of, the children is the main priority. So, they tried to issue, additional guidance. But I think, as Katie's mentioned several times, the key is that the importance is that everybody wants the child to be able to see both parents as much as possible, given extreme circumstances.
So what about folks that may have out-of-state parents? I mean, one parent lives in Kentucky, another parent lives in Indiana. How is that sort of being determined?
I can't speak to other states' executive orders, but generally I've kind of perused them, and they almost all include some kind of exception for necessary travel for the care of minor children and so on. So at this point, I would say that they're mostly in line with Indiana's, and that, dealing with your children is an essential function of life, and you should continue as ordered, even across state lines. Now, there may come a time where that changes, but gosh, I hope not. But it, at that point, then my information would change.
So what about spring break and summer vacation? Because this is obviously going to go into summer vacation. How are you seeing some things pop up around that at this point, Lindsay?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think there's been legitimate confusion based upon just the changes in schedule. So, school let out early, schools, not going back this year. And so what you have to remember is that when we set spring break and summer parenting time, that was set at the beginning of the year when the schools issued their school calendars. So you should still go to your school's, school calendar and keep the same schedule. So everything outside of spring break and summer that was already planned is still the same. Essentially, that means that spring break, if it's 2 weeks for your school district, just because school was out doesn't mean that spring break is now 5 weeks. So there's e-learning time in there. things like that you have to remember. So spring break, normal parenting time, summer parenting time should all remain the same as you planned at the beginning of the year.
So what if the other parent wants to take the kid to Indiana Beach? What if they're going to just break the order and take the kid on vacation? What do you do then?
So that's obviously a violation of the stay-at-home order. Vacations, trips, they're not part of what we would consider to be an essential activity. So that would be a problem. There is a function on the Department of Health website, but that mostly relates to reporting businesses that are violating stay-at-home orders. There isn't really anything in particular for individuals doing that. So I would say that if you're in a situation with your child's other parent where they are indicating that they're going to take the child to Florida for summer vacation or spring break, I guess that would be the more accurate example at this point, then that would be a situation where if you can't work it out together, you probably need to bring it to the courts.
Okay, so you mentioned child support, and with 20, 30 million people newly unemployed, that's going to become a concern. What does one do if they've lost their job and they're unable to pay child support, or they're may get behind? Like how does that work out in the courts, or how should couples work that out?
So this was included in the Supreme Court order and kind of discussed this, but basically we know that's going to come up. What parents should try to do is pay what they can. So if that means that right now they can only pay $5, they are still making a good faith effort to pay child support. So what they should also do is, it's not the easiest thing to do, but they should notify the court and ask for an emergency modification of child support. Because what happens potentially is that when everything calms down and they're able to get back in court and have their child support recalculated, that amount of child support will backdate to when that petition was filed with the court. So that can help somebody in this situation. I think that, I can't predict what the courts will do, but I do think that they're going to have to be flexible given the economic state right now in our community. And I think that as long as parents really try and are making an effort, I think that they will look favorably upon that. Obviously, they're going to, so many people are filing for unemployment, losing their jobs, out of jobs, furloughed, whatever it is. And I think that, that's going to be a new issue that we're going to have to deal with when we get back into court. And so I don't really think anybody can predict how that's going to go right now, but I do think that there's going to be some flexibility around it.
The overwhelming theme we've been getting from judicial officers, from lawmakers, from just about everywhere is let's just do our best. So, if your best is, keeping a receipt of sending money, like keeping check records of sending a check, then that's what we do. Like, that's how we're going to handle it, and we will figure it out on the back end.
Yep.
Seems reasonable. Again, I'm talking to Lindsay Scott, President and CEO of Kids Voices of Indiana, and Katie Kelsey, Director of the Children's Law Center of Indiana. Their website is kidsvoicein.org, and they have a great FAQ that is in the show notes on the podcast or at their website that gives some advice, some guidance on custody and parenting time. Again, none of this is legal advice. Consult an attorney for your specific needs. So my final question is what is or about to start creeping in, which is what if one parent becomes sick or the child becomes sick with COVID-19? How should the courts or parents deal with the fact that, let's say, one of the parents is incapacitated potentially? Who makes the medical decisions at that point? And I mean, it's a sticky issue, but what are the discussions ongoing about that?
So the situation that you're worried about is the situation where there's no available parent left to care for a child or to make medical decisions for a child. If there are two, functioning parents, then if one parent is incapacitated, the other parent still has that ability to make decisions for the child. So what we're trying to encourage people to do is to plan ahead. Nobody wants to think that they're going to get this virus and that the worst will happen, but we've seen lots of cases of perfectly healthy people being hospitalized and completely unavailable to provide care and supervision or make decisions for their children. So we recommend making some kind of family safety plan in the event that a sole parent with no other involved parent, in the land has, or that, married parents or parents who are a functioning unit have, so that they can make plans for the event that there's no one there to make decisions for the child. You need to pick a person or several persons, given the widespread nature of this pandemic, who can care for your children and who you trust to supervise them and give them the attention they need and to make medical decisions for them. You can accomplish that informally, or you can accomplish it more formally through a parental power of attorney, or even something like a standby guardianship.
And those materials are on our website. So Katie has put up forms that parents can use and some instructions, and those are coming in Spanish as well. And I think another thing to remember is even if you are in a co-parent relationship, so you're married or you're not married, but you have joint legal custody, you might want to talk to each other about what would happen if both of you got sick, and still have a person. I think it's always good to have an emergency plan.
My husband and I went ahead and figured out several backup caregivers for our kids, because just in case that we are both unavailable, we need someone to be able to take care of them and to make decisions for them in case they get sick as well.
Yeah, and I've had conversations with my family members about it as well.
So, final question to you both. What is the thing that you see on a daily basis that you wish everybody knew about your work? What would you say to people listening?
For me, I think what is so key for me about our work is how preventative it is. It's really hard to, explain our impact when it's a prevention service. But by everything we do, we are essentially working to prevent children from being abused and neglected. And so whether we're directly providing best interest representation for a child as their advocate, or whether it is providing the, best practice legal information to a parent or a caregiver or a grandparent, they are then able to take that information and use it to protect that child. So really everything we do, at the end of the day is about preventing child abuse and neglect. And that's why, for me, it's so important and so unique as well.
Are we seeing an increase in child neglect and abuse as everyone's staying home? Like, have you seen any statistics or anecdotal evidence that that's occurring?
I've seen anecdotal evidence. I'm hearing from police officers that they're having a lot more domestic violence runs, and there are often children involved. And what is really concerning for us is that we've actually, compared to the same time last year, we've seen a dip in calls to the statewide child abuse and neglect hotline, which at first you're like, oh, that seems great. There's less calls. But the problem is that less people are making calls because there's no access to children. All of the people who would normally report child abuse and neglect, like teachers, counselors, friends, friends, parents, other people like that, have been kind of ripped out of these children's lives, and there are no extra eyes on kids. So we're really worried about what we will see on the back end of this.
That's a really delicate issue, because if you're the other parent and you suspect some form of abuse, neglect of some sort, I mean, how do you deal with that? How do you raise that in a way that doesn't look opportunistic?
It's very hard.
Yeah. What were you going to say, Lindsay?
I was just going to say, yeah, Katie's right. It is very hard. And so I think that, in Indiana, I think everybody forgets that every single citizen of Indiana is a mandated reporter. So, if you truly believe that your child is being abused or neglected, you have the obligation to report that to the hotline. So, I think if you do that, with a good faith and legitimate reason, that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. But it is very tough.
And they should also, parents should keep in mind too, what I had said earlier, that when we are on the other side of this, courts are probably not going to be overly thrilled with people who used this situation to their advantage and potentially exhausted resources like the Department of Child Services and placed those resources in danger by making claims that were not based in reality.
Right. Okay. So, Katie, what is the one thing that you see daily that, man, I just wish everybody knew this?
Well, I would have to echo a lot of what Lindsay said for our own organization. And in the context of this particular pandemic, I would say that I think that this is really illustrating how important community is to children. Children have had so many aspects of community removed from their lives, and now they are isolated into a very small unit. And I think that this will really highlight how important it is for communities to work together to help protect children from abuse and neglect and other forms of endangerment. And I hope that in the end, some good can come out of that, and more resources and time and attention and funding can be given to organizations like ours and other organizations across the state that help protect children.
What are some things that either of you have seen that can help help kids feel more community in this time? I mean, I've seen some beautiful things like kids that have birthdays, their family has parades where they're driving by and honking, or what are some things that you're seeing that kind of help solve that problem, Katie?
So I have seen in my own neighborhood kids leaving messages for each other with chalk on sidewalk or on the sides of their houses. I have seen families actually rearrange their backyards so that playgrounds are near each other, but certainly far enough apart to be safe so that kids can kind of play on their playgrounds right across from each other. There's been in my house, a lot of Zoom dates with classmates. So they listen to music and eat the same snacks together, and they do crazy things like make faces and show each other the chewed up food in their mouths, whatever it is that kids do. So using technology, but then also using some more old school methods of communication by, 2 tin cans and a rope.
What about you, Lindsay?
So one thing I've been seeing a lot of is scavenger hunts and reforming them in ways that, because not everybody has access to computer or tablet or whatever it is. So within the home scavenger hunt, over the phone scavenger hunt, I've seen a family tree one where you call, different people in your family to get different information about, who was born this year, who's been to this state or whatever it is. I saw another one that was a gratitude scavenger hunt. So it was finding things, in your life or in your home or in your backyard, that you're grateful for in certain ways. So that's something I saw that I thought was pretty great.
So when we're not in the middle of a pandemic, and finally, I want to ask, what does Kids Voices of Indiana, what is your main focus? You're probably focused on a lot of issues right now surrounding this, but what are some of the day-to-day things that you mentioned? A guardian ad litem system and supervised visitation. Those are maybe things that people have heard of. Can you give a brief description of what those two entail?
Absolutely. So the guardian ad litem program is very essential, and to your listeners, I hope too, because we run that program using volunteers. So it is a fantastic way for somebody to get involved with our agency as a volunteer, and you do not need any background information or training. We train you in-house. And what they do is they serve as an advocate for children in family court. So these are kids that are going through divorces, adoptions, guardianships, or any kind of custody or parenting time dispute that's heard in Marion County Court, civil court. And so we do that. We use volunteers who go out, meet with the families, do an investigation, meet the kids, counselor, parents, grandparents, talk to the teachers, and really provide the court with a holistic picture of what this child's life is really like and where would this child be the most safe and stable, at the end of the court case, basically. So we're helping the court system make these decisions for these children that are the best for them. And our staff attorneys then support those volunteers. We provide information in court. We put on our own case, just like a mom or dad or grandparent does. But everything we do is for that child. So that program is really essential to doing that.
Excellent. Well, Katie, anything you wanted to add to that?
Nope, that about sums it up.
All right, perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Again, their website is kidsvoicein.org, and they have a great FAQ about custody, parenting time, and the COVID-19 pandemic, so please check that out. Please share this. Lindsay, Katie, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having us, Chris.
Yes, thank you.
And today, my guest is Chad Priest, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Red Cross Indiana. And they have a message for all of us. They are experiencing a blood shortage. So, Chad Priest, thank you so much for joining me.
Chris, thanks for having me on the show. Appreciate it.
So, first off, what is the website that everybody should continue to monitor if they want information and updates from Red Cross?
It's very easy. redcross.org will get you news, information, give you a portal to donate blood, schedule a blood donation appointment, or to donate funds, as well as to volunteer. redcross.org.
So what is happening right now with blood donations, and why are we speaking today?
Chris, we've seen since the COVID-19 pandemic began, at least acutely in the United States, so think back 20 days or so, less than that even, we've had 4,000 blood drives canceled in the United States. That is a result of businesses and schools closing, and a lot of people may not realize so many of our blood donations come from schools, colleges, high schools, as well as companies. So those have closed. We've had 4,000 cancellations. That's led to us losing over 100,000 units of blood. And that's just the numbers where they stand now. Every day that is compounding. In Indiana alone, midweek at 150 drives canceled with over 5,000 units lost. The cancellations are coming so quickly, it's very difficult for us to keep track of them. So it's a severe shortage we're finding ourselves in. Our projections are that this shortage will exponentially grow in the coming days and weeks.
So what impact on hospitals and patients does that kind of shortage have?
Well, it's for a long time, scientists have been trying to figure out a way to replace human blood with something synthetic, and it just can't happen. The only way to replace human blood is with other human blood. So without it, there are going to be a lot of people who we are at risk of not giving them what they need. So think, for example, of we've all had someone in our lives impacted by cancer. Transfusion medicine is a key focus of a lot of cancer care. We know that in trauma, motor vehicle accidents, things like that, there's a need. Surgical procedures, the list goes on and on. Blood products are an essential component of modern American medicine, and without them, we could see a lot of people becoming very ill or sick, maybe even much more so than through the COVID-19 pandemic itself.
In other areas, I know the Red Cross is a global organization. How have we seen the Red Cross deal with this blood shortage in places like Italy and other places where you operate?
You're right. The Red Cross is a movement, a global movement. I can't speak to the specific blood challenges in every country. Not every country does the Red Cross collect blood, so our services do vary from place to place. But I think we should all be feeling very good about the fact that our Red Cross global movement is fully mobilized, because it's not just blood. Here in Indiana, for example, the Red Cross is mobilizing our disaster workforce. It's going to take a lot of lift for us to be able to continue to provide the disaster services that Hoosiers rely on every day. We're entering into the spring tornado and flood season. That's a very active time in Indiana, and we're having to make dramatic changes and modifications to our systems to ensure that we don't degrade those services. We continue to serve military members and their families every single day. Those services can't stop. So our Red Cross, with about 138 years of Clara Barton's DNA, literally in our veins, we're fully mobilized. But this is going to be an unprecedented effort by the American Red Cross and all of the Red Cross societies around the globe.
Talking to Chad Priest, who is the CEO of the Red Cross of Indiana. Their website is redcross.org. So how are you trying to meet those challenges? I mean, it's hard to get people out to volunteer. So what does that look like for you? How do you do these prep in a time of quarantines?
Well, one of the things we're reminding folks is that it's so critical that we are applying good social physical distancing. This is such an important feature of our overall epidemic control, and we're relying on our public health partners to guide us in those efforts. But that social distancing cannot mean social disengagement. Now more than ever, neighbors and community members have to resolve to look after one another. We offer a few ways to do that. We've partnered with the state of Indiana, the Family and Social Services Administration, to offer psychological first aid training for mental health workers and others. We've had over 1,500 people sign up for that training just in the last few days, and we're going to be making additional training available. We're also asking neighbors to do very simple things, like check on one another. It seems silly, but a lot of us don't know the name and phone number of the person that's right next door to us, even though we could get in our house and Skype with someone half a world away. We can't overemphasize the importance of staying connected. We are going to have to lean on each other for help. And then, of course, we need volunteers. And even if you're home and unable to leave, we are able to get you trained to volunteer through online training and online courses. And you can sign up at redcross.org, and we need you now. A lot of our volunteers are in the 60 to 65 age group, and we know many of them will have increased restrictions on movement and et cetera. So now's the time to broaden our appeal for volunteers as well.
So if you're working in a virtual situation to volunteer for the Red Cross, what are some of the things that you would be doing?
Well, we start everyone out with training. Unlike a lot of volunteer opportunities, at the Red Cross, volunteers are 97% of our workforce. So volunteers do everything in our organization, and that requires some really intentional training up front. Almost all of our training is either already virtual, web-based. Where it's not, we're making modifications to offer that training through teledistance. Once trained, we've got opportunities that range from helping us secure and locate blood drives, helping us staff those blood drives, helping us prepare for disasters, responding to disasters. We do a lot of telecase work, and of course our service to armed forces work is always remote. So there are a lot of opportunities to do a lot of good right from where you may be sitting.
So when you have these blood drives, what measures are you taking to make sure that everybody involved is safe?
The first thing that's important to note is that it is perfectly safe to get and receive blood because COVID-19, and in fact any respiratory virus, cannot be transmitted via blood. So the blood supply itself is safe, and there's no more risk to donate blood than anything else. We're taking some extraordinary efforts at our drives, including temperature screenings at the door. We've increased social distancing in our operations so that our beds are farther apart. We are avoiding or eliminating any sort of queues or waiting. We can do that in a number of ways, depending on the physical building itself, limiting it to no more than 6 people in any given space. And, of course, our phlebotomists and technicians are some of the best in the country. They're extraordinary healthcare providers. You'll see them applying best-in-class evidence-based use of personal protective equipment, wiping down surfaces, et cetera.
So, final question to Chad Priest, who is the CEO of the Red Cross of Indiana. In your work every day, what is the one thing that you wish everybody listening could see or understand that you're just going, this is obvious?
I wish everyone would stay home. Some of us have to be out for our work, healthcare workers, humanitarian workers. I'm out today, and what I'm seeing it concerns me. We need to listen to the advice of public health authorities and our government officials and remain home. I am confident that Hoosiers will be able to not only survive this epidemic, but thrive through it. But we have to start by making decisions that are in the best interest of everyone. Stay home. Check on your neighbor. Find a way to be socially engaged. So go to redcross.org, donate your blood, donate funds if you can, register to volunteer, and don't give up. Stay the course. I think that's the message we all need to be sending each other, and know that your Red Cross is standing beside you.
All right, Chad Priest, that website again is redcross.org. If you are home and you don't have much going on, please hit up the Red Cross, help organize with them.